with some more stationery reviews. I wanted to review my current bullet journal that I just finished. It's a kikki.K grid journal, and I just wanted to talk about the notebook that I used. Basically, this is my third bullet journal. The first two were also kikki.K notebooks, but there was this larger sort of, not quite A4, but closer to that size notebook that I used, and it has a lot of like different patterns going on in the pages. So not every page, some pages had these really tiny grids, some were blank, some were lined, and then some have artwork on them that I couldn't really use in any way. I did enjoy that though. I really like about kikki.K journals that they have that variety. I like having different designs and artwork on different pages. This one was the similar setup where there's pages that change. There's sort of blank versus lined versus ones with artwork on them. This one has sort of sideways lines, you can see. That was my second bullet journal. And then I moved to sort of a slightly more traditional type of bullet journal, which is this grid journal that kikki.K brought out. This version of it, it used to say write it down here in gold, but that's all rubbed off. This was the first basically grid journal that kikki.K brought out, and they do have their second generation one is available now for $19.95 Australian, and that one is a plain black fabric cover that just has white type here that says grid. And so essentially they're calling it a grid journal. They've made a point of not mentioning the word bullet journal or anything along those lines in their description of it, but it does essentially what it's trying to get at is that you could use this as a bullet journal. Now I wanted to talk about that a little bit because I did use it as a bullet journal, but I think it has some major shortcomings that I wanted to talk about. So to start with, we've got a hardcover here, which is nice. If you like hardcover, I suppose. It held up well sort of in my backpack when I tossed it in there. It is sort of a traditional kind of ribbon binding. I'm not sure that this will show up very well on the video, but traditional sort of binding. It always laid pretty flat, which I liked about that. Even when you get to the back of the notebook, it's still sort of laying pretty flat, so it's never really an issue of opening it up and using the pages, so that's really good. The size is annoying for me. Basically it's an A5 height, but then it's not an A5 width, and it's just a bit short, but I found that just a bit really affected the way that I could write. I found it really annoying, especially when I was doing, say, a monthly log. Let's see if I can find one. I just felt like I was squishing things into the lines, and sometimes I needed a little bit more space to write. You can see things, I had to write that one in the line below, even though it's for that day, and things just getting a little bit squished, which really annoyed me. And now that I've moved back to a more traditional A5 size, that extra, centimeter or two has made me so much happier. You really start to notice the difference. And when you open the notebook, it goes to this cute pink grid page, which I think is really cute, and that's on the back cover as well. Then you flip one open. It has a little description of the journal and how you can use the journal. Annoyingly, they've glued these two pages together, which they did at the back as well, and I just find that really annoying when notebook manufacturers do that. Like, why do those need to be glued together? I suppose there must be a reason. Then we come to the contents page, and this is my number one. This brings us to my number one gripe about this notebook. Okay, so it comes with a pre-printed contents page, just one, not multiple, just the one. It has these lines for the title. You can write title here, and then page numbers here and here. Now, what I find absolutely illogical and incomprehensible is that they have included a contents page and it asks you for a page number, but they didn't number the dang pages. So I had to go through and hand number every single page. Why would you like refer to a contents page with page numbers when there aren't any page numbers in the notebook? Now, I see that they've done that same exact thing in the current model. I'm hoping that it's something they might fix in the future, but again, in the current model that's available to buy, they have a contents page and then no page numbers. Where's the logic in that? The other thing that I really hated about this contents page is the sizing. So they've put these lines for writing in the title. They're the size of a grid, which I would probably, I don't know, I would have done 2, I guess. I found it really squishy, fitting them in between these really narrow lines here. I also found this, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just 6 squares across for the title, and then just 2 for the page numbers. Now, if you do sort of traditional bullet journaling where you actually thread, so for example, my journal, I'll continue numbering it. I'm not going to rewrite journal every time I've done another journaling entry. So as you can see, I just kept numbering across, and I had to number across both columns. I couldn't understand why there were 2 columns of titles instead of just doing 2 pages of a contents, a content spread, that sort of thing. I would have much rather had it that way. So the paper inside the notebook is relatively opaque without being sort of noticeably thick. It's a pretty good thickness, but then you don't see very much through. I use Artline pens, and with the black Artline pen, I didn't notice very much ghosting with this notebook. I think with a traditional gel pen, you do get a little bit more ghosting, but yeah, it depends on what sort of pen you're using, I suppose. Now, one thing that I really didn't understand, so this was another sort of thing that made me scratch my head about this notebook, is that it came with all of these templates, and they're on like thick cardstock. So at first I thought maybe they were stickers. They're not stickers, they're just templates, and they're sort of set up to be traditional, like the collections you see that people make for bullet journals. So you have like a birthdays and anniversaries template, and then you have a monthly layout template, and for some reason that's across 2 separate pages. And I think the idea, I guess the idea with these is that you would slide it under and copy that template. But the paper is so opaque that like I found I couldn't actually see the template at all. Can you see that at all? Like hardly. You can barely see monthly log, and that's this really thick black. With the thinner lines, I couldn't see them at all. So I found these templates absolutely useless. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with them. I couldn't figure out how they could be useful, even if I'd wanted to use them. Say like the weekly layout is quite a good one. And there's quite a few here. There's daily notes, my bucket list, TV shows and movies. That's one I do use, but not the template, obviously. I just have a TV shows list, places to eat, weekly expenses. And then there's some sort of favorite quotes that you can, I guess the idea is that you would trace them out. But again, you can't actually see through to trace them that well. It's very, very faint through this paper. So that is a dumb thing about this notebook. The current one also comes with these same templates. I found them useless, but I do really like the fact that the paper is relatively opaque, that it's not thin enough to trace. That's a good thing in general. So instead of instead of dots or grids, you have these little gray crosses. Now I find this it's definitely busier than the dots, and I found it like a bit too busy. I found it, a bit annoying, I think. Let's see if I can find a good page. Yeah, it just makes the page look a bit sort of dirtier and messier in a way. The crosses aren't too dark. The gray is faint enough, but yeah, it still bothered me. The other thing I did was when I was making some layouts, so for example, I used some weekly layout templates like this, where I was doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday. I gave up on these, but I was doing them for a while. And so what I wanted to do was count how many crosses or squares there were that I had to work with if I was going to divide by 6 or divide by 3 or divide by 7, whatever. And so I counted out the crosses. And what I learned, found really annoyed me again. And that's basically that each page has 44 crosses from top to bottom, and then it has 26 crosses wide, which means that there are 43 squares and 25 squares across. Now 25 obviously is divisible by 5, so that's kind of useful, but 43 is a prime number. You literally can't divide that by anything except for 43 and 1. So I really got annoyed with the fact that there was an uneven, non-divisible number of squares to work with. So when you're building templates even your monthly log, and you want to sort of number things down or figure out, I suppose, figure out how to divide things into the month, whether it's 31 days, 30, whatever, it just leaves you with like odd numbers of space. The other thing that really bothered me about this notebook is, I'm going to try to find a good example of it. So at the top of the page, I think, yeah, you can kind of see here. At the top of the page, above that top line of crosses, there's quite a gap. And then when you go down to the bottom of the page, the crosses are basically just a millimeter above the bottom of the page. So there's no space between the bottom, like there's no margin here, and then there's a huge margin here. The other thing I noticed was that sort of going from page to page, that the margins moved side to side a bit. And when you look at this page, for example, you can see that the way that these two pages were lined up is that they aren't actually lined up correctly. So my crosses go here and then they jump up here. Same at the bottom, you have them down here and then they jump up here. So if you're trying to make a template that goes across a spread and you want a straight line that goes across that spread, you can't have it. You have to like basically be between crosses, which is really, really annoying. I think that would bother a lot of bullet journalists who do a lot of this sort of more artistic stuff and who do a lot of template-y stuff. Basically, yeah, like going back to these templates that they've included, if you looked at that monthly log again, essentially your monthly log is gonna look like that. It's gonna be off-center. And who wants an off-center monthly log? Come on, right? So that really annoyed me, the sort of the lining up of the crosses, the cutting of the pages with the crosses. I think that that's poorly done. I think they could do a lot better on that. There is only one bookmark in this notebook, which is all right. You can live with only one bookmark, and I did, in fact, for basically, let's see, I started this back in basically the beginning of November 2018, and I went through to May, the end of May, and I started a new one for June. So basically this has lasted me, what is that, 7 months, and for 7 months I've lived with one bookmark, so that's okay, right? I can do that. What I do in order to do that, so I use the bookmark for my daily log, and then for monthly logs, I use these cute little cat paper clips, which also came from kikki.K. That was maybe a year or two ago that I bought these. I don't think they're still selling them, but I love them. They're so cute. I would definitely buy more if they brought them back. So yeah, I was using those to mark my months. I also, up until May, I used washi tape as well to mark my monthly spread, so that even with the paperclip, like it would still be a bit easier to find. So you can see throughout I've got some washi tape lining the edge of the page. So there's a simple pocket at the back, which you may have seen. I store, stickers and stamps in there. That's where, when you buy the notebook, that's where the templates are located. They're in that pocket. Pockets are always really useful, obviously. This one's really simple. It's just glued down on 2 sides and then open on the third. So it's not the most, I suppose, secure, but I never had an issue with it, as long as like I was sort of putting the notebook in my bag like this, or maybe sometimes like that. But it was always fine, as long as you don't, I suppose, do it upside down. So my general advice, if you're a bullet journalist and you're thinking about buying a kikki.K grid journal, I would say don't buy it if you like designing layouts that require straight lines across a spread, or if you like regular non-prime numbers of squares. So if you need, square numbers that like make sense or are divisible. Do buy it if you're comfortable with a bit of quirkiness. It is quite a quirky notebook, I suppose. It doesn't have any of that artwork that you get in other kikki.K journals, which is all right. It's just the grid pages all the way through, so that means that you get to be the creative one. It does have some imperfections, so if you're comfortable with imperfections, go for it. A complete lack of reasoning and logic, I find, with that whole like not numbering the pages, stuff like that. If you're comfortable with all of that, with imperfections and the lack of reasoning, I would say it's a great notebook. It's good fun to use, and kikki.K always makes really nice clean stuff, as well as really cute artistic stuff. So this definitely goes more in the direction of the nice clean lines, especially the current version that's for sale is very just minimalist, modern black, that's it, with the gray grid inside. So yeah, you'd be erring in that direction as opposed to the sort of cutesy doodle area.
Okay, so now I'm just doing a quick flip through of my journal. As I mentioned, I used this as a bullet journal from November of last year until May of this year. Another thing to note is kikki.K did actually record quite a cute video about this journal, how to use it. That was about a year ago. It's on their YouTube channel, but I'll put a link below in the description as well. So check it out, it's quite cute.
Alright, so thank you for watching my review of the kikki.K Grid Journal.